Hey, if anybody is just joining me now, just give me 1 second. Just got to set this thing up. It's always a little tricky. All right. All right, so I should be broadcasting live on YouTube and Twitch right now. If you have any questions for me, please just put them in the chat on YouTube. I'm not able to look at Twitch at the same time right now. I'm going to try to figure that out in the future. But if you leave a comment there, I'll try to go back later and answer it. So today I'm going to be inking this piece here, which is just sort of a psychedelic, just weird piece that I'm doing for a client. They gave me a lot of free reign with it, which was a lot of fun. And I always prefer those type of projects in a big way. So what I've done here is, this is the pencil drawing. This is all digital in Clip Studio Paint. And I'm going to do what I always do and make this blue. So we're going to take all of that hard work I did and knock it back. And now we're going to trace over top with the inks. And if this is your first time watching one of my streams, if you have any questions at all, if I miss it the first time around, it's not because I'm ignoring you, it's just it's hard for me to draw and look at the questions at the same time. So if I miss it, just feel free to write it again or write it in all caps to make sure I see it. I see a bunch of people just joined, which is great, and Queen Nyoka, I don't know, I like saying these names. You have some questions about Clip Studio Paint, so go ahead and let them rip, and I'll try to help where I can. Before I get started drawing this, I just want to say I just got this thing. If you can see this here. This is by Razer. It's a Razer Orb Weaver, and it's made for our computer games, which I don't have time to play, unfortunately. I used to have, I don't know where it went to, but I used to have a Razer Nostromo, which is the earlier model of this thing, and I used it to death. It lasted me about 7 years, and it finally broke yesterday or 2 days ago. So I had to get this one, and it is a major improvement on the Nostromo. So if anybody is using that or considering getting one, I highly recommend this one. It's called the Orb Weaver. It's very expensive. It's $120 for this thing, and it didn't come easily. But having it in my hand, it's so comfortable. And the keys work so well. They're mechanical keys, so everything just works so fast and quick. And the purpose of this thing is you program all of your keyboard shortcuts and stuff into this, and into this joystick. This joystick alone holds 8 different tools that I use all the time. So just with my thumb, I can go and switch from the pen to the pencil to the lasso tool. Highly recommend this if you're doing a lot of digital art. It speeds you up so much. All right, so let's go. Let's see. Hey, Tom and Randy. Nice to see you guys. And Chris Daniels, if you're looking at the Razer keypad, just get it. Even if you can track down one of the Razer Nostromos, they don't make it anymore. But if you can find one used, it might be worth it, because as I said, that thing lasted maybe 7 years well, it did fail. I was going to say without fail, but 7 years I think is a pretty good life for something you use every second of the day. All right, so let me go in. I like to start the pieces as I warm up with the areas that I'm most comfortable with. So, for example, the face, I'm going to leave that till later, because that's I struggle with that. So I want to be pretty significantly warmed up before I go there. To ink this piece, I've recently started going back to some of Ray Frendon's brushes. I really like this one called the Nib Flexible. Um, it's a really nice one. If I wasn't using that, I probably would be using either my expressive brush um, or another one of the brushes I made, like the Fat Maru is really good. But for this one, I think this one will work nicely because I got to do, yeah, that'll look good. Katie Olson, you're asking, can I send a link to one I would recommend? Just go to Amazon or Razer, their website, and they don't have a lot of models out there, so you'll find it and get one. I was looking at going with another brand besides Razer because they're not nearly as expensive. But once I started reading the reviews and some of the features, it just made sense to go with something that I knew was going to work well and be quality. And I think I made the right choice. I don't know. We'll see. Also, I have a cold, guys, so I apologize for my weird voice, which is now made even weirder. And with this piece, I'm going to try to be a lot looser and quicker than I typically am. Uh, Quicker is a relative term because I usually do take a lot of time inking, unfortunately. But I want this piece to have a lot of lines and a lot of rendering because I don't. It's going to have a lot of color when this thing is finished, but I don't want to do a lot of shading or rendering with the color. I just want to maybe just pick some wild colors and then do gradients and let the line art do the talking. Hey, somebody from Russia. How you doing? Somebody from my chat feed here is recommending the Wacom Mobile Studio Pro, and you must be probably the fifth artist who has recommended that thing. And I'm actually considering getting one. I used to have the Wacom Cintiq, the very first model, and I ended up selling it because there's a lot of reasons why I didn't end up using it much, uh, but the Mobile Studio Pro seems to kind of address all of the concerns I had with that first one, so it definitely seems worth checking out. Hey Tom, Tom Martin asked me if the Orb Weaver by Razer could handle a lot of shortcuts. So I think so. I mean, if you look at this thing, I don't want this to be a commercial for the Orb Weaver, but it's got like 25 buttons here. I'm sorry, 20 buttons, and then 8, 9, 10. And within each of these buttons, you can even program entire macros. So you could just go to the app, the Nostromo app, and I'm sorry, the Orb Weaver app, and record like an entire series of actions, and you can map that to one button. Now, I haven't tried that yet, but it's working great for me. It's become to the point where I almost never need to use my keyboard. Shouldn't say almost never, but rarely. And one of the whole reasons I got it in the first place is that I have this Wacom Cintiq, the 24 HD, and it has buttons on the side of it, but I found that they were too stiff to push for my weak little hands. So after like a few days of working those buttons, my thumbs, I could sense some problems coming, and I didn't want to mess with that. In addition, there just weren't enough buttons to really do what I needed it to do. So this thing is much more ergonomic. Yeah, if again at the beginning, if I missed one of you're asking me if I missed your question. It's difficult for me to draw and look up at the screen at the same time. So if I did miss your question, please just go ahead and ask again, and I'll try to get to it. We're going to be seeing it tonight. I keep hearing amazing things about it, which is really encouraging. My wife and I, we never get to see movies, actually, because we've got 2 kids, and movies cost, what is it now, $100, $150 a ticket. So it doesn't happen much. But just so happens tonight, stars and planets are aligned, and we can go. And looking forward to it. I hope it's better than Dark Tower, which I didn't see, but I heard it was pretty bad. And that's incredibly disappointing. Hey, Mike from Canada, how are you, buddy? I've said this before, but I wish the technology was more of a two-way conversation here. Because a lot of you guys who are on this stream right now, like I would love to just be able to talk with you live, It would be cool if you could somehow call in or something. I don't know. Maybe they'll figure that out. Mhm. Hey, Squid Vicious, I appreciate the compliment there, and that your name is awesome. Hey, Mary Dunford, do I work primarily in Vector or Raster? And definitely Raster. I'll only work in Vector if I'm designing a logo for a client, and that's usually only if that company kind of needs a Vector logo. A lot of my logos are Raster, which um, I know can be controversial, but I just I just really do not like Adobe Illustrator. I just have never really felt like I'm actually illustrating. I guess it feels like I'm just playing Minesweeper, like clicking little points and dragging things, and just and not to disparage Adobe Illustrator, because obviously there are artists out there that just kill on that thing, just make beautiful works of art. But I'm not one of those guys, so I just never have gotten it. Um, but there are a lot of times when you're working for a client where you can't avoid it. You need to make a vector logo. So what I typically do is I'll draw in this program in Manga Studio, and then do some things to trace the line art. I have a program that does that works pretty well, and then I'll color it in Adobe Illustrator. Hey Kurt, thank you for buying the brushes. Um, not to, I hope I'm not going to be an aggressive salesman here, but I do have a second pack that was released last November. Um, so if you like the first pack, I had like 100 more that I released on my site. I'm working on a third series. Um, it's almost done. It's like 100 other brushes. The uh, the trick with the brushes is that like you can only make so many pencil brushes, or ink brushes. So I'm kind of running out of ideas on what else to make. So I have a feeling this third set will probably be my last set, either forever or for a long time. But thanks to everyone who picked it up, and most people have nice things to say about them. I'll tell you, uh, this talk about Adobe Illustrator. Um, if Clip Studio Paint or Manga Studio or however you want to call it, if they can figure out how to make their vector layers actually output to an EPS file or an AI file, man, they would open up a whole new market for this thing. That would be incredible because, as you know, anybody who uses this program knows that they do have vector layers, but you just can't export them to anything useful, unfortunately. I think I might have talked about this last time, but I had purchased the new iPad Pro um, and returned it. I made a video about this. I'm gonna try to release soon, but it wasn't for me. I just didn't. I really didn't like it. Um, if anyone listening does like it, I'd be interested in hearing your feedback. Um, so many artists out there have done amazing, amazing things with it, but it just was not working for me. I'm a fickle dude, I guess. So I have a question here. You're asking why your layers flatten and disappear because I'm using vectors in Clip Studio. That's a really hard question to answer. My guess would be no. It sounds to me like something else is going on. Um, if you're using vector layers, you would know because it would have a little icon, like a little square box icon by it, and as long as you save the file as a Clip Studio file, then those will be there every time you open it. They're not going to flatten or anything like that. Um, so, not sure what's happening there. Might want to look into that. I always tell people if you're having any issues with Clip Studio Paint, Manga Studio, don't hesitate to contact Smith Micro because those guys are super responsive. Um, it's actually a really cool company. Like I've talked with the people who run it, um, and it sounds to me like it might be a kind of small operation. I'm not real clear on that, to be honest. Um, I wish them the best of luck. I hope they can figure out how to just continue growing and maybe take a bigger piece of the pie, because I want them to succeed, so they keep updating this program, So I'm getting a question here. Why the hell did they change the name from Manga Studio to Clip Studio Paint? And I think what it is some kind of licensing problem. Um, Part of it is like, I think Smith Micro wasn't exactly the company that developed the program, but they maybe purchased it or something. And in so doing, there was some kind of, I don't know. Listen, I'm pulling this directly from my ass, but I think there was some kind of licensing problem when they purchased it, when it changed ownership. So for a while, the digital version of the program, the one you download, was called Clip Studio Paint, and then if you bought it in a box, it was called Manga Studio. And so many people would email me and say, hey, I'm thinking about getting Manga Studio, but I see Clip Studio Paint is cheaper. Which one should I get? And it's like, they're the same program. Absolutely, exactly the same, So maybe they just changed it because they were tired of answering that same question. But Clip Studio Paint was just a disaster. I mean, what a cheap, generic sounding name. It's really unfortunate. It makes it sound like a clip art program or something. And I think they dropped the ball on that. I think it's such a great program. I think they had a chance to maybe rebrand it. But again, what the hell do I know? It's funny me talking like that, and my business name is Flyland Designs, something that nobody can spell or even understands. So, although I guess that makes me an expert on stupid names. So I know what I'm talking about. Katie Olson asked me if I ever attend conventions. So I've been thinking about this for a long time. I've been to, I would say, 6 conventions, but they've all been pretty local. I'm from Central Pennsylvania, State College, Pennsylvania, and I did not have a lot of success, unfortunately. I think there was one, the best one I did was in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and I think I made $450 for the weekend, and that's not good, because to spend my whole weekend and then only come home with that, it kind of hurts. And then the worst I did, there were some where I just made like $120. There were a lot of problems. Maybe it might be worth talking about for just a second. First of all, they were smaller comic conventions, so there were not a lot of people, and there were a lot of artists, so there was a lot of competition. And when I talked to other artists there, it didn't sound like a lot of people did a whole lot better, So the other problem is since I'm primarily a service guy, my income is made from doing freelance gigs for clients. I don't actually have a lot of artwork that you can just print on a print and it looks good hanging on your wall, and I also do not have a lot of fan art. A lot of the guys that seem to be doing really, really well were people that had a ton of fan art. I mean, there were some people where their whole booth was just a wall, 20 prints by 20 prints, like it just went to the ceiling. And by every one, there's just a little letter, A, B, C, D, and then you look on a chart, and it's like it's like a menu at McDonald's, you look in alphabetical order. You go, oh, Deadpool, 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 Deadpool. C1, Battleship. Okay, there's Deadpool. I'll take Deadpool. And I'm not into that. If you go to my portfolio, you will see that I've done parodies, unofficial parodies. So don't realize that some of what I'm about to say has some hypocrisy there. Um, but I don't really respect people who make their living that way. I try to have fun with some parodies sometimes and make them funny. But the guys who just go to these conventions and then every piece of artwork they sell is like Spider-Man swinging through, Manhattan or whatever, Deadpool. I don't know. That's not for me. I don't think there's a future in it. I don't think that's going to make you a better artist, and it's not going to make you happy. And from most of the people I talk to, sometimes they make it sound like it's making them rich. Not usually. So, anyway. Hey, thanks, Squid Vicious. Yeah, Ken, how you doing, Ken D? Um, Ken is saying that he's glad that I'm doing a live stream again. So I know that I kept saying I'm going to try to do this every Friday, and I looked, and I think the last time I did a live stream was in June, so it didn't work out. Um, what happened is I think it's the summer. I mean, I've got two kids, and the kids were home during the summer. We got really busy this summer, and it just also we go camping a lot, so it seemed like almost every Friday we were taking an early day off and going camping. Um, so it just became really really hard to be consistent with that, and I apologize. I really want to find a way to make this consistent. Um, I think it's good for me and my development. I enjoy talking with people. It's a good way to meet new people. So from now on, now that the kids are back in school and the summer's kind of over, I think there's a good chance I'll be able to try to do this every Friday. I think, at least every other Friday. And Friday is really a perfect day because there's fewer people calling on the phone. Usually, all the people that have wanted artwork, it's already gone out. So. Hey Tom, you say you tried a live stream for a while. Hey, here's the problem. I would have loved to watch your live stream. So you have in me a guy who wants to see it, right? But everything has to be perfect. Like you have to be on at the exact time that I'm on, and not just on, but at a time when I have a second to sit and watch you, or I'm in a place where I can turn the volume up and whatever, and then even then, Facebook still has to show it to me. I mean, Facebook's algorithms have gotten so strict that a lot of the stuff I want to see, I'm not seeing, and it's too bad. So, if I were you and if you enjoyed it, keep it up, and be aggressive with telling people when you're going to be on and when you are on. Um, because next time you're on, I'd love to see you and talk with you. Hey there, Brian. What's up? I got your message the other day, and we'll be sending you stuff very soon. Oh, that's right. I did reply to that. So, yeah, we're on that, and I apologize for the delay. This is the kind of stuff I like to do on Friday where I don't really have to think about it, you know? Hey, what's up, Marty? Um, I'll answer your question. First of all, I really appreciate you hooking me up with that job. It's been working out great so far. Uh, so you're asking how am I mirroring the painting on both sides? Um, this is one of my. It's really easy. This is one of my favorite features about Clip Studio Paint. So first of all, you have to get that program. It's called Manga Studio 5 or sometimes Clip Studio Paint, and it's really cheap. So if you like Photoshop, I think you should get it. It's very easy to learn, and it's just a lot of fun. Um, to make it symmetrical, all you do is you just grab this tool here, which is called the Symmetrical Ruler, and I just have my artwork in this layer folder here. You throw the Symmetrical Ruler down, and now anything I draw will repeat on both sides. The cool thing is you can have as many as like 16 lines of symmetry. So if you throw down one of those guides, you can draw and it will mirror it like kind of like a spiral graph effect. And I find those kind of things really useful when making like tattoo looking designs or patterns or things like that. Um, very, very cool. um, while I'm while I'm waiting for more questions, I'll just rant about something real quick. Um, so I recently had an experience with selling a lot of art prints, and almost never do. I have them on my website, and people do buy them, but it's always just like one here, one there, you know. Um, so recently, if you follow me, you probably saw that we were lucky enough to do the artwork for the pinball machine for Alien, and we what we did is we printed up 100 of these 28-inch by 28-inch giant Alien posters. They looked awesome. The printing company who did them was just amazing, and they look so cool. So I was interviewed on a pinball podcast, so I figured I might as well seize upon that opportunity to try to make some extra cash from it. And we printed these up, and we made them limited edition prints of 100. So it was a 100 run, and I signed and numbered them. Um, we sold out of them, and for me, that was just such a great experience because, as I said, I've always been envious of artists who can pull that off. A lot of my favorite artists, that's how they make their living. You know, they spend a week, 2 weeks on a piece of art, and then they sell the prints of it, and that's how they make their living. Um, that's very different than my business model. But anyway, what I wanted to share with you was that, like anything, what I learned from that experience is that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. Um, so here's why. The so the money we made from it was great, but it was not without suffering. Um, just packaging and shipping 100 prints, just the act of that took my wife, me, and a summer intern we had. It took us the entire day of just sitting there, you know, taping, wrapping, boxing, or we had these tubes, so putting them in the tube, um, we used a program called ShipStation to organize all the orders and purchase the shipping labels and all that stuff. But we still had to take them all to the post office. And some of them, I don't want to tell you the whole long story, but it turned out that a lot of them we put the label on upside down, going around the tube like this way instead of this way. I didn't realize there was a difference, but they can't scan it, right? So we had to go home and we had to take off half the labels, 50 goddamn labels, and reprint them, and retape them on. And just the cost of the tubes, and then the shipping, and then the printing, and of course these alien prints, since they were so big, they cost a lot of money per print. So the profit margin wasn't, it was large enough, but it wasn't maybe as big as some people might think. So anyway, then of course there's all the marketing I did. We made lots of posts about this. I was talking about it for a long time. That takes a lot of time. And I feel like I want to share that experience with you because it's so easy to look at what other artists are doing and to just picture it in your head like, man, they're making the easy money, right? Like, they just draw something once and then they get to sell it 100 times or 200 times, and the cash is just rolling in. But that is far from the truth. Far from the truth, because it ended up being so much work. And even after we were all done, we had to give, I think, 5 refunds because there were some prints that UPS messed up. They crushed the rolls, and then when they finally got there to these people, the prints were destroyed. And they were limited edition prints. I only made 100, so it wouldn't be worth going back and making another set of prints. So I refunded them the money, and now I got to figure out if it's worth trying to get a refund from the post office. But I'm sure that's a nightmare, right? Then we had a lot of people overseas who ordered these things, and you got to be real careful because that shipping can be incredibly expensive, and on and on and on. I don't know. So I guess I don't know what the point. I guess the point of that was, for a long time, I've always wanted to sell a whole print run like that, and this was the first time I had done it, and it's changed the way I look at it a little bit, because if I were to be doing that once a month, that would get pretty old pretty fast. Even though I would love to sell a print run of 100 every month after month, but it would almost change the way I have to operate. I'd have to figure out something, Yeah, Tom. So Tom Martin, my friend here, really talented artist. He says that he's got to switch to like a con printmaking lifestyle. See, that's another area where like I get envious for a moment until I realize again that there's no such thing as free. There's no such thing as residual income. I know that's a word that we like to throw around. Residual income gives this idea that you just sit back and collect a check, right? But these con people, I've talked with them. I've seen them. They work hard, man. And I started thinking about. I looked at a list of cons that maybe I could go to, and then I started thinking about it. This is my whole summer. My whole summer would be every weekend. Maybe not every weekend, but full weekends, sometimes Thursday and Friday. would be devoted to going to these things and sitting at a table, you know. And that I decided that just was not for me right now. Maybe when my kids are a little older and don't require so much supervision. I don't know. I don't know when that ends, but I don't know. Just especially in the summer, I like my weekends. I think it's because I do this every single day, and I like to be able to go camping, go kayaking, go bike riding, or whatever, you know. With that being said, I'm sure if you talked to a con guy who does really well, and there's a lot of them, they probably think people like me are suckers, you know, because I sit here and draw things over and over and over and over again for people when it sounds like some of them have figured out how to just draw one thing and then sell it for years, you know. Um, so. Uh, Brian asked, "Do I use Mobile Studio?" Um, you might be thinking of Manga. It's called Manga Studio, and if that's what you're thinking of, then yeah, that's what I use, and it's great. This thing here with the mouth coming out of the shoulder, um, it's funny. This is something that I drew back in like 2009, when I first really started getting into illustration. Um, I had a comic book, and this was like before Facebook, before social media. You basically had these webcomic websites. So one was called drunkduck.com, and every week I would make a new page in this webcomic that I had called The Ends. And it was this crazy, kind of weird fantasy sci-fi book. Um, I still love it, but the artwork was terrible. The story probably made no sense at all. But the main character, he woke up in this sort of strange afterlife sort of world, and he had this mouth come out of his shoulder that was like his guide. Like it talked to him, um, and helped him figure out what was going on. And so anyway, I thought it'd be fun to bring that back in a way. Oh, Brian, yeah, you're thinking of, yes, I use the Wacom. It's called Wacom, and I use the Cintiq 24 HD. Hey, Vasi or Vasi? Sorry, I don't know how to say it. You make the comment here that thanks for introducing me to the sword. Um, it's a band. Still my favorite band. It was just so awesome. And saw them live once. I'd love to see them again. But they played like they just didn't even they played with almost no stage show or presence. They barely talked to you. It was almost like they didn't care you were there. It was like you just sort of you came upon them in the woods or something, and they're just playing their crazy shit, and then they left. Um, and it was awesome. I think I was the only one there who went to see that band because they were the opener. Um, but I love them. I would love, I would love to do artwork for them, you know, um, but I don't know how that's done. I don't know if you just email them. I'm sure even at their level, I'm sure they have a manager or something. So I would have no idea how that works. Um, and then the depressing thing is that I know because of the way the music industry works now, it's difficult to get a very big paycheck for something like that too. So if I were to work for the Sword, which would be a dream, I'll bet I would be taking a pretty big pay cut to do so. Um, which may be sometimes you just have to do that, unfortunately. That's something, if you talk to any artist who's been doing this for a while, you'll come to learn that sometimes the bigger the client is, the less they pay. And when you start out, you have this idea that it's exactly the opposite. Like you'll look at uh, a guy. Well, okay, let's just talk about me. So I'm very lucky to be working with Hulk Hogan right now, and I'm happy with what they're paying. But I'll just say it's probably not what you'd expect. It's not what I would have expected if I were still 23 years old, just starting out, and if I had come across my website and saw, wow, this guy works with Hulk Hogan, like he must be loaded or whatever. Um, and the reason is they've got people lining up for miles who will do artwork for almost nothing. So you just gotta fight. You gotta fight all the time for what you can get, the best you can get. And I feel like what I got was the best that I could get in that situation. So that's what I tell myself, and I move on, and I'm happy with it. So that's a job where we negotiated some exposure into it, and that might actually be a time when exposure is actually works in this situation because he's got such an enormous fan base. Again, rationalizing to myself. Hey Tom, it's really interesting that you mentioned Dirty Donnie because I just got familiar with his work too, and man, it's incredible. It's incredible, this guy, and I'm attracted to it because he has a style similar to mine, and I would say similar to yours too, where you and I are guys who draw a lot with line art, with like thick, heavy line art, and then we color it in a comic book way, and Dirty Donnie does the same. Um, I have no information on what he got paid for that. Actually, I'm gonna step back from that. I have some information on what pinball machines pay in general. He may get more because of the clout that he has and the reputation. Um, but the thing with pinball machines is that uh, they're they're tricky, man, because they're not a mass market product, right? Even the Metallica pinball machine, it probably is selling or producing more copies than any pinball machine out there right now. However, in relation to other things, like a new PlayStation video game, for example, it's probably just 10,000 units or something, and that's a lot. You know, some of these machines make 5,000, 4,000 units, sometimes less. So, if I were to guess, I would guess that if you found out how much he got paid, it would probably disappoint you, or me. But probably the way he works his business is if you look, this guy goes to tons of pinball shows. He has pinball books. He goes to conventions. He sells his original artwork. He sells prints like crazy. And my guess would be is that the job isn't the payday. The payday comes after the job, you know. And I would love to get in that position because it means that there's a lot of work that I have to turn down because the budget isn't there, right? But I would love to take things just because I want to take them and not worry about the money because I know that once we're done, I can sell, 300 prints of this artwork at $30, or sell the original for $2,000, or you know what I'm saying? And so Squid Vicious, just to address your comment, like you're saying, because it's a Metallica pinball machine, you would think that it would pay more, right? But like I'm telling you, I know artists who are friends of mine, and they've done stuff for Metallica, and they've done stuff for Foo Fighters and Leonard Skinner and Pantera and whatever, and sometimes those T-shirt designs will pay like $500 or $600 or something that you would expect from like a local band, you know. It's crazy. Pinball machine is different than a T-shirt. It's just viewed differently, so I'm sure it must be priced differently. Again, I want to make a disclaimer that everything I just said, I don't have any actual real information on any of those prices. Well, except when I said I did. So I don't know what Dirty Donnie got paid. Not my business. Though I would love to know. Tom Martin, you say we disagree on Dirty Donnie. Is that, you mean you disagree with the artwork, or do you not like his style, or what? I liked it. I thought, and the thing is here, when you're looking at the Metallica thing, I can imagine what that process would have been like, because if I got that job, I would have freaking loved that job. But you have to be so careful because James has got to look like James, and Lars has got to look exactly like Lars. And if Lars, what era does he need to look like? And maybe Lars thinks he looks too fat when you send him the thing, and maybe James likes it, but his wife thinks he looks too evil. You know what I mean? And it could. I wonder if it went back and forth forever, or if they were cool to work with. No idea. No idea. Oh man, how long have we been doing this? I appreciate everybody watching and asking me questions and stuff. This is really cool. Definitely going to try to do this every week. Also on Twitch, but I'm still trying to figure Twitch out. So I'm sticking to YouTube mostly. So if anybody's watching on Twitch right now and you're asking questions and I'm not answering, I apologize. I'll try to get to them later, but I can't see them right now. Yeah, so Squid Vicious makes a comment about artists getting the short end of the stick. Yes, and I feel like I've been doing this long enough now that I kind of am starting to know what I'm talking about. Um, I hope I've earned that. I don't know. Every once in a while, I'll talk to somebody who's doing it for decades, and then you realize that you don't know shit, right? But I've been doing this full time now for 5.5 years, and I was a professional illustrator before that for 7 or 8. And we've talked to a huge volume of people, and we've sent out a huge volume of quotes, and I can confirm your statement that people are always looking to save money, and for some reason, the artwork is always where they try to save that money. For example, I'm doing something that's pretty cool for a pretty big license, and I can't say right now, but the guy told me that it costs 17 grand just for them to purchase the license to be able to do this officially, right? So they pay that much for the license, but then to have me do the artwork, let's just say I'm not getting paid 17 grand. I'm not even getting paid a fraction of that, right? So, and that's what they were saying to me. I gave them a quote that was, I thought, reasonable, and they come back saying, yeah, we'd love to pay that, but we already paid 17 grand for this, and we don't have enough for this. So the artist, unfortunately, even though we're the ones making the product that they are going to sell, without us, there's nothing to sell. We are the place that they try to cut corners. And they might hire an artist for $1,000 to do a design, and then they spend 20 grand on an advertising company to market it. It's crazy. But it's the only thing I know how to do, and I love it. So we figured out a way to make it work, but it's a goddamn fight every day. Yeah, Chris Oatley. Someone just mentioned that Chris Oatley has some great podcasts about getting paid and what you're worth. I love those types of guys. And who's the other one? There's another one. Oh dang it! What's his name? It's another guy that makes videos, and he's got like hundreds of thousands of followers and whatever. I love listening to their advice, but I take their advice with a grain of salt, because you got to understand, a lot of these people, they're now making money just from their exposure and ability to give you advice, right? So they are not probably in the same grind that I am, where it's jumping from one project to the next. It's more like they have people buying their books. They have people donating on Twitch. They have advertisers. They have whatever. And then occasionally they'll do artwork when the right project comes that can pay them 100 grand for the year or whatever. So there are some people where, unfortunately, they get so successful that their opinion can almost not be relevant anymore, if that makes any sense. So I like getting advice from people who are in the trenches with me, or maybe who are just a step above, like they were in my spot 3 years ago, and now they're doing really well, and it's like, okay, so what? You have any advice for me? What happened? What'd you do? You know, um, there are some other guys too who are huge on social media, and I think they plugged in at just the right time, right? Um, so sometimes you come across somebody who's got hundreds of thousands of followers, but they've done that because, I mean, they've earned it because they're incredible, right? I'm not trying to diminish that, but they also maybe got started on Instagram when Instagram first started, and there weren't, a trillion artists on there. So anyway, I would just say, like, be conscious of that. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. So Tom Martin, always saying smart things here. So you're saying, kind of confirming what I said, where, like, unfortunately, when you reach a level of success like some of these guys, um, and your advice sort of becomes irrelevant. Uh, well, I don't know if I should. Let me just say I agree with you on that one. I don't want to spend the whole time talking about that because it starts to sound. Why I'm hesitating is because it starts to sound angsty and bitter, right? You know, um, but and that's why. Okay, I always tell artists who contact me or they're curious about how to get started. Um, you have to make this part of your life. You have to constantly reach out to other artists and talk to them. Um, I'm not going to give a name, but I just had a conversation today with an artist, uh, hugely popular, enormous following, and I had all these myths built up in my head about him, and he's talking to me and giving me some real inside information and just being incredibly honest. And it confirms that when you think you elevate people, you put them on a pedestal, and you find out that they're just they have some of the same fights and the same struggles that you do. Um, they just are doing things in a different way, you know, and that I think is the challenge of social media and seeing so many artists out there and envying them is that it makes you think that you can do everything, and you forget that a lot of these artists are good at one or two things, and they figured out how to do them again and again and be successful at it. Then when you see 50 artists do that in a row, do different things, you want to do all 50 of those things. Well, there's just not enough time in the day. And not just that, even if there was time, trying to do all those things is detrimental because it becomes confusing for your audience, you know? You know, Christina here has a really good comment. Um, she says that she started to her um, post her artwork not in places for other artists, but places where the end users see it. And I think this is a fantastic point. Um, I never really thought about making it, but it's actually something that we do, not consciously, I guess, but I think it ends up working really well for us. And I see a lot of artists who have asked me for help, and I think they are doing exactly what they shouldn't. What you say that that they shouldn't be doing. They're posting all their artwork on DeviantArt, for example. Not to pick on DeviantArt, but on DeviantArt, you know, who are the people that sign into DeviantArt? It's other artists, right? So yeah, it is a good place probably to get respect. I don't know. I'm not involved with that site. Um, but I guarantee it's not a good place to find work. Not real work anyway. Um, so I just disparaged it. But yeah, so find what you're good at. Find somebody who would want to use it or buy it, um, and then market to those people. Market to customers, not artists. And excuse me. And that goes back to what I wanted to say. What I was trying to say about Chris Oatley is that you got to remember now. You they are very good at making it sound like, you know, they're your buddy and they're giving you a secret. But you are now their client, right? You are now Chris Oatley's customer. So you always have to be wary of what you're hearing, you know. That sounds paranoid as all hell, but that's me. uh, so Tom Martin, you're telling me you're drawing a water bottle. Um, I think now I don't know exactly what you're drawing or who you're drawing for, but that's another thing to always remember too when you are, because I fall into this trap all the time. Um, I always look at what other artists are doing on Instagram and whatever, and it's easy to fall into this trap that it's like, oh god, everything they're doing is amazing. You know, how did they get there? Um, and I was just talking to, again, I try to reach out to a lot of my people I admire. So I was just talking to another artist. I won't name him, but you know his work. You've seen it, I'm sure. Um, and he told me that he only posts probably about 40% of what he actually does because he says that the 60% is stuff that's boring as hell. And you know, and here's a guy who, in my head, I imagined that, you know, he wouldn't take anything unless he loved it because he must be making so much money and just rap video on a boat with ladies in bikinis kind of thing, you know. Um, it's not the case. I'm sure. I'm not saying he's not doing well. I'm sure financially he's doing great, but just like all of us, he still has to do stuff that he doesn't want to do. And the stuff that you don't want to do, like drawing a water bottle, um, that's the stuff that funds the things you do want to do. You know, and I think that's important to remember. And I'm kind of talking out loud because I always forget that myself. Um, is that if you can, especially if you take something that doesn't pay well, but you love it, and then you take another job that you hate, but it does pay well, instead of, you know, grumbling about it, just see it as like on net, you're doing well. You know, you got to do one thing you like, one thing you don't like. One thing paid well, one thing didn't. But in net, it's the same. Once it hits your bank account, it's the same money. Um, Now my wife and I, we've been really lucky in that we fortunately don't have to do a lot of stuff that we don't want to do. But when you come across those things you don't want to do, that's the time when you throw out a really high quote. You know, if you don't want to do it, think about what is that price where you would do it, and give that price. You know, because sometimes you get that. Some of the highest paying jobs I ever got were things that I didn't want to do. You know, and it's because it gives you like this confidence, this oh, I got nothing to lose. I'm gonna throw this out. I'm gonna throw this crazy quote out there, and if they don't take it, good, because I didn't want to do it anyway. You know. Though of course I realize that sounds pretty privileged, I guess, because I am sympathetic. I do understand that somebody listening might be in a position where they just need to take anything. You know, they can't choose. They got to take anything just to pay the bills. And believe me, I was there. So I'm not, shitting on that point of view. If you are there, though, you just want to work as hard as you can to get out of there, because that can kill you fast. You know, you can only do that for a few years before you hate it, before you hate art, and that's not good. Somebody asked here, isn't my symmetry tool supposed to draw the other part? So what I'm doing here, I like to use the symmetry tool. Let me zoom out. I like to use the symmetry tool on the pencils and then some of the inks, but then it'll get really stale really quick if the whole thing is completely symmetrical. So this island here, this is a natural structure, and you think about it, it would be impossible for like a volcanic island to be completely symmetrical, right? So I turn my symmetry ruler off while I'm inking that part, you know. Other things, because this is going to be like kind of a psychedelic piece, sort of a design piece, everything else I want to be symmetrical. You know, I want the pose, the tentacles, whatever, to be symmetrical. But I'm about to draw some mountains and some trees and stuff with the symmetry turned off. I think that was your question. I forgot some tentacles. And I've just got a keyboard button here programmed to turn symmetry on and off really quick. So it's really handy. I think tentacles are really funny because so many artists draw them, and me included, and they're so much fun to draw. But you so rarely actually see tentacles in your day-to-day life, right? I mean, in nature, when was the last time you saw, when was the last time you were swimming and saw a tentacle? All right. Yeah, right. I guess unless you're into Asian cuisine, you probably eat a lot of tentacles. I didn't think about that. Actually, I've probably seen more tentacles just of people taking pictures of their food on Instagram than I have like actually at an aquarium. I don't think I've ever taken a picture of my food ever. I don't get that. And that's why I'm not popular. The problem with these live streams is that I end up taking way longer to ink things than I normally do because I'm focusing on the screen here and I get lost in my little rants. Um, Normally this should have only taken me about an hour to be finished, something like this, um, and then maybe another hour and a half to color it, maybe. And a lot of that has to do. It would take me longer if it wasn't symmetrical, of course. So that saves time. That's something I've been doing lately. Is if the budget is a bit lower, I'll do a symmetrical design, and the client doesn't know what went down, but I just ripped them off 50%, buddy. So I have a question from Keith asking if I'm going to participate in Inktober this year. Um, yeah. Sorry, my kids just got home. Um, I'm definitely going to try. I did it the last 2 years, and it's definitely a lot of fun. It's rewarding, and I think. Hey, hello. How's the day? Um, what was I saying? Yeah, guys. What? Okay. Real professional studio I got going here. All right. So what was I saying? Inktober is so much harder than you would think. Like you just think, oh yeah, all I got to do is just one quick drawing every day, and it just becomes incredibly hard to find that time to sit down because really there's no such thing as a quick drawing. It's always going to take an hour no matter what I do when I sit down to do something. So it's tricky, but if you're trying to grow your social media, I would definitely recommend it because there's something about hand-drawn art, like on a piece of paper, that really, really, really excites people, unfortunately, more than digital does. Even though, I mean, digital artists, I have a feeling a lot of digital artists are watching me right now. Like, we both know that there's no less skill involved. In fact, I don't want to piss anybody off, but I kind of feel like there's more skill because you have to know how to draw and you have to know the computer, you know? So it's really, it's two skills in one, two things going on at once. So that being said, when people see artwork on a piece of paper, especially on Instagram. Like, I just think it has more potential to be liked, and that's what, that's what life is all about. Um, and for it to be shared. Um, I've noticed that whenever I post sketches, they often get like more likes than the actual finished artwork. Um, I don't know. Maybe my finished artwork sucks, but I don't think that's it. I think it's just what I said. People look at it, they see a drawing, and they think, "Wow, that guy just made art." But if they see something that looks like it is being made on a computer and it's finished, they get this idea in their heads that something else must have happened there. You must have used a program, or maybe it's a computer model, or I don't know. That's my theory on. There's a lot of artists that get have a much larger following than me, and you go to their page, and most of their artwork is just monochromatic. It's just black and white inks over and over again, of skulls and roses and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's part of it. I think it's just people who don't understand art look at this page, they see art, but then when you go and you see like a digitally colored piece, people aren't sure exactly, well, what is this? What happened here? All right, actually, I'm going to wrap this up. I've been inking this way too long. So if anybody has some last questions, I'd love to answer those real quick before I go. What's that? Oh, actually, some people have said that the stream has stopped. That's true. Sorry about that. Well, yeah, all right. So if no one else has any other questions before I go, thanks so much to everyone who is watching. Um, I will try to be here next Friday and Friday afternoon. So thanks a lot. Um, if I missed, oh, hold on. So Whoopty frickin' do asked, do you get an issue of the pen bringing up the preset manager in Photoshop? So that sounds really weird. So are we talking about the pen in Manga Studio? Because I'm using Manga Studio, not Photoshop. Um, oh man, it's funny. People always save the big life-changing questions for when I'm about to leave. Um, Shamir asks, where do I start if I want to be a t-shirt design artist? Oh man. Um, well, and I hope this doesn't sound condescending, but the best place to start is just to start making t-shirt designs. You need to have a portfolio of artwork that looks like it's made for t-shirts, because t-shirt artwork is very different than a logo or poster artwork or packaging design artwork. You can't have a rectangular frame. It's got to have like an interesting shape to it. Um, it has to be limited color. So that's another thing too. Like, you need to start learning how to draw with just a few colors, how to keep things separated. Um, I do, and I don't want to discourage you, but I want to tell you that, from one artist to another, t-shirt art, for whatever reason, is one of the least respected areas of artwork. Okay, so the prices that you get for the same time you put in compared to other areas is going to be much less. I was just on the phone the other day with somebody who called and they wanted me to make artwork for Cabela's, which is like a really large hunting brand in the U.S. It's one of the biggest, right? And I gave them this quote thinking it was going to be a big deal. Well, they wanted to pay just $300 per piece of artwork, and that wasn't going to work. And that's very common, like that's a very common price, $300, $400. So if you're in a spot where you are okay with that, then by all means focus on t-shirt art. But my personal recommendation would be offer t-shirt design as a service, but don't bill yourself as a t-shirt artist, because in fact, when I talk to artists who have become really successful and they used to be, or they had great t-shirt designs, even for like Metallica, like huge properties, the one thing they always tell me is, they say, I don't do t-shirts anymore. I got out of that because it just didn't pay, So I wanted to answer your question honestly. I hope I don't discourage you, but what I'm trying to say is, you phrased the question, how do I become a t-shirt artist? I would try to become an artist who also does t-shirts sometimes, and make yourself more, we've been lucky to be very successful, and if all I did was t-shirts, I probably would make 30% of what we do now. It's brutal. So don't put all your eggs in that one basket. So one last question. So Whoopty Freakin' Do is asking, with the tablet using Photoshop, I always get this bug where I draw little details and the brush preset pop up multiple times. That's really weird. I've never seen that. My guess would be is that something like with your pen is doing the right click to bring up the preset menu. That's all I can think of. So I would Google that one. And all right, that's a wrap. So anyway, thanks again. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions for what I should talk about next week, feel free to email them to me. And as always, just a little pitch. I sell Manga Studio brushes that I made on my website, flylanddesigns.com. I sell stickers and stuff too, and if you want to check those out. So thank you. Goodbye.